Um, Mr. Please, can you help me? What? So I'm in now.
No, no, no. You listen. You listen. I am not part of it. So you can finish what you're saying. I'm not interested. Ihe a abụrụ ihe ị ga-agwa mmadụ ebe ọ na it's not the kind of conversation. Mụ ihe na-akọ I think we're meeting. I don't know. Ọ na-amụ ọ na-amụ ebe ọ nọ ọ na-amụ ebe ọ nọ ọ na-eme certificate ọsịsị ọbụla ọ na-etinye ọ na-amụ ebe ọ nọ plus he only has one DS exam left on his degree. Ọ na-amụ
No, okay.
na you can only suggest these type of things only that
Yeah, you there?
Sorry, I have to go.
Hello, Ike.
This is a late, very late. You guys are late and nobody came back to say when. I have to leave at some point.
Hi, Chika.
Hi, I'm coming.
Good afternoon, Rotimi.
Hello, good afternoon.
How you doing?
Very well, thank you. And you?
All right, very well, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Deepo, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Karachi, are you here?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, Chika.
You gotta give me a minute. You showed up late.
Okay, so we were having some technical issues, but I think we're good now.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, just I would like to start by welcoming everybody that's about to start. We are a little bit late, but it was a technical problem because I'm supposed to be hosting from church, and the idea was to actually avoid any technical issue. But then things happen, and but I'm thankful that we're here now. I would like to start by welcoming my panelists to just say a few words as we settle in. So I'll start by Deepo.
Okay.
Deepo,
all right.
Can you just say a few words before I come back and do the proper introduction, and then we can go into the session.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. And depending on where you are in the world, good day. It's Nigeria's 60th independence celebration. Can you hear me?
Can everybody hear Deepo? Because I can't hear him.
Yeah.
We can hear him.
Yeah, we can hear him.
Okay. I can hear him now.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
great.
Deepo, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that happy independence to every Nigerian and everyone who is a passionate follower of all things Nigerian. The main sessions at the platform constructed today, looking at the issues of development from many perspectives. But here we're going to be talking about creative and the film industry. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Apologies once again for starting late. We're deeply sorry. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dikbo. Chika,
Yeah.
how are you doing today? How are you celebrating Nigeria at 60?
I'm not celebrating, actually. A part of me is very sad. A part of me is hopeful, but I'm not celebrating. I'm not. I don't know that we have a lot to celebrate. If you were born in the 70s or earlier than that, or in the 80s, I don't know that there's a lot to celebrate. I don't know. Anybody feeling celebratory right now where we are? I don't know. Hey, but hey, we're here. Well, I'm celebrating that at least today. I haven't heard that they killed anybody in Kaduna or in Jos. No governor has been ambushed or shot. So for now, that's something to celebrate, I guess. There's still power problems in Nigeria. It's worse off. Health issues. Don't get me started. We have issues.
Yeah, I know. I guess that's one of the reasons why we're here, to have this conversation and hope that we'll move this country forward. It's I definitely I can relate with a lot of things that you've just said, Chika. Karachi, how you doing today?
Hey, we're good. I think I'm just really grateful that I don't have to be in class today. I think
I agree.
Chika, you get it, right? But anyway,
I get what you're saying, sister. I do.
So it's any day that you get to be at home with family, eat what you want, wake up and actually see, broad daylight from the windows of your house. It's a really good day, especially if you're in my industry where every time you're giving off energy. So you have a day to sit back and relax and rethink, refire, and then get ready to get back into the fray. So I think for that, I'm just really very grateful.
Yeah.
I know Nigerians love public holidays. I think it's somewhere in our DNA. So I guess everywhere, there's an excitement.
Yes. Yep. I get that one too.
Awesome. Rotimi, how are you doing today?
All right, thank you very much. I'm doing very well and optimistic and excited as well. I believe that there's more ahead of us than what's behind us. So
Amen
I'm just
to that.
Amen to that. Amen to that. We have to. I know sometimes it feels so frustrating, but I guess we can't give up on the project Nigeria. We have to.
No, there's
we
no
have to
giving
keep
up.
pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to keep pushing. Again, welcome everybody, and again, apologies for starting late. And because we started late, I will just skip the normal formal introductions. I'm sure you've just met our wonderful panelists, and I'm looking forward to having a beautiful conversation and then a very constructive conversation as well. Sometimes people feel like, oh, why are we talking about all these things? Because we've been talking and talking, and it looks like nobody's listening. But you see, even the entire world was created with words, and so we have to keep talking, we have to keep speaking, we have to keep having conversations, and I'm excited because I'm surrounded by people who don't just talk. I'm surrounded by people who talk and do, as they would say in Nigeria. So we'll just go straight just dive deep into the conversation straight up. And I want to start with you, Dikbo.
Okay.
What do you, when you saw the topic building creativity into our curriculums, what came to your mind?
Well, honestly, I was wondering which of the, if first of all I was sent the right topic, because You know, it seems to be more of an educationally centered topic. But then when I saw the word creativity, I realized that, you know, creativity is something that applies to every single industry. So I knew I was in the right place. But specifically, I was quite, I knew that the conversation was going to center around, you know, how we can bring up younger people, you know, to learn better through certain methods. You know, if you especially around Nigeria, you know, there seems to be like a fixed way things happen. The way we were taught in the 70s and 80s seems to be the same way that some schools still teach now. And so I was thinking more about how can we bring a different perspective to learning, a different perspective to helping kids understand that, you know, learning is an art, just as it's a science, that it's also an art as well. And that as people who are players in the creative industry, we also have a role to play in influencing the process of developing curricula and so on and so forth. Just before I get off, an example comes to mind. In 2003, I served in Port Harcourt, and, you know, I was teaching literature and English, and my head teacher really didn't want me to be in class. She would just say, you know, come for your 2 sessions and go. But I figured out that quite a number of the students there were also not attending class. So they seemed to be quite disinterested. And it bothered me that we would just leave these kids to be out there. At the end of the session, they would probably pass or fail. So I thought, hey, what can we do? Fortunately, Hilda Dokubo was a special advisor for youth at the time under Peter Odili's government. And she had a program for theater performances for schools. So I got interested. I told the principal of the school, I think we should get involved. And fortunately, he accepted. And we took those kids, they were in SS1 at the time, on this competition. And for the first time, I saw some of them who were always playing football outside while school was going on, attending these rehearsals, and they went for the competition and they came second. But after that, I noticed that they started coming back into class. So we sort of needed to find something to hold their interest beyond just using a cane or threats, something to get these kids back into the school system. And for me, that experience has stayed with me. It sort of inspires me to think that there are other ways to get people involved in the process of learning beyond the age-old methods that we've always been used to.
Wow, that's actually quite very powerful. As you were speaking, I just even remembered my own journey, my own story, and how I got started into this creative career, into the career of creativity and drama, storytelling, and all that. And I remember that it goes way back to my primary school. You know, some of those dramas that we did in school, and you know how that, you know, when as a child you perform in front of the audience and everybody loves you and stuff like that, it sort of, you know, helps you to start to think that, oh, okay, maybe, you know, there's something here for me, even as a child, you know. So yes, I definitely agree with you on that. Karachi, I'm coming to you. So as an educator and as a creative entrepreneur, Karachi, do you think that we are doing enough in terms of, you know, involving creativity in our learning process as a country, as a nation?
So no, I don't think we're doing enough, obviously, because I think the state of the country kind of like speaks for itself. If we were doing what we should be doing in education, we really wouldn't be here. Nigeria runs a system of, not a system, more like a pedagogy or a paradigm, where we believe that a child is an empty vessel and then the teacher fills up that vessel, yeah? But actually, that's not what's happened. That's not what happens. Every child is born with a content, and it's the teacher's role to facilitate the discovery of that content. So if the teachers in the classroom and the families at home are not facilitating that, what we're going to have is round pegs in square holes. And so obviously, when we talk about creativity in the curriculum, yes, there's a creative sector. There's the performing, the visual, the, what do you call it, graphics, creative arts, all of that. There's the delivery of that in the curriculum. However, how you deliver every topic should be creative. The reason why a child, just like what Dipo was saying, the reason why a child will be engaged is because, first of all, his mind is engaged. His curiosity is piqued. And so I'm going to want to learn if that's what's happening. But if that's not what's happening, and if you check for most schools, that is not what is happening. And when I say most schools, you know, in Nigeria, we're on a large spectrum where you have the private schools that can afford the teachers who even understand what I'm talking about, to the government and the public schools where you have teachers who are a bit oblivious to exactly what's happening now. How much more when you now have to deliver that curriculum online via Zoom? And so, let me even make you laugh. Chika, you've not started laughing. Like, seriously, I'm working in the early years. And of course, you know what the early years, so you have children from 3 to 6. And so if I put on my Zoom and I'm staring at you and your content is not creative, I'm going to walk out. And you know, children are the most honest audience you can ever have. They're honest because they don't paint things, you know, they're not very kind about their feedback. So they're going to answer you with their feet. They're going to walk away. And you know, when they were in class, you could say, Peter, could you focus, please? We're doing this. But they're at home. And so, Peter, can you focus? Peter has already reached the kitchen where he's getting a plate of food. So if your delivery is not creative, your curriculum is not creative, your ideas is not creative, you're not thinking out of the box, you're not, you're not transforming yourself, because, you know, the children we're teaching now, what we're talking about creativity has completely changed. The creativity of the 70s, the 80s, the 2000s is not the creativity of today, where you now need to find more creative spaces and platforms, think out of the box for how to get theater to the people. Now that there's COVID, how do we get theater to the people? So these are questions that if we're not solving them and we're not helping people to think creatively, first of all, how can you creatively solve a maths problem? How can you creatively figure out, you know, this issue before we can even talk about how can we now transform what we have in the creative industry to more unconventional spaces? So I don't think we're doing enough. Let me just, you know, stop it there. I think we have quite a lot to do. And it first starts from the home and of course the curriculum and the teachers.
Wow, thank you so much. I think one of the questions that you raised that is very powerful is how can we help our children to start to think creatively? You know, so that when we think about involving creativity into our curriculum, it's not only just so that they can grow up and become actors or musicians or, you know, even do anything in the core creative session, you know, but I think it's important to include creativity in our curriculum so we can start to help get our children to think creatively, because I see that a lot of the problems that we have as a country is that we have a lot of people in decision-making places who are not thinking creatively. You know, so I think it's a very, very powerful question that you have raised. And then I will take that question and pass it to Chika and say, Chika, how can we get our children to start thinking creatively? How can we make it into a system of education that will help our children to start to think creatively?
I think Karachi has said everything in terms of the education part. It first goes to foundation. Like when I was growing up and when most of us would have been kids, if you had a parent that was a teacher, teachers went for teachers training. So there were developmental courses that were done over and over again to enable them do their jobs better. There were times where you had all your sandwich courses where they went, discussed with each other, exchanged schools. All of those things are not going on anymore now. The funding for that has been whatever, blown out in the air, whoever's pocket is going into. So when we say our children, the first thing is the foundation though. You know, you cannot give you cannot have, if you do not have the resources to create, first off, then the children are not going to get any sense of creativity. Then it goes back home. When we were little, we spent less time on, so we didn't have social media. Who had social media? You know, and there were specific times you watched TV. You didn't sit at home when you came back from school and just boom, TV. TV came on at 4 or 6, depending on where you were born, get it? And there were specific types of stuff on your TV. You had the cartoon period, and then you moved on till about 8 o'clock when you got one of the soap operas or See, so everything had a time. Children played with each other. Games were explored. You know, these were times when people practice doing debates. How many kids just sit down and practice that, or test themselves with dictation? We used to do that. All of these things feed a part of your brain. When that is lost, which is why if you're a creative person, generally, if you're a storyteller, you're a writer, a painter, whatever, you find that you need to practice as often as possible. Even if you're a coach, a life coach, or a speech person, or you need to practice. You find yourself making conversation. So I would call IK and just create a conversation so that I test myself, understand what people are looking for or are listening for. We are lacking that at home right now. A lot of parents are so pressured with the bills that everybody here knows what I'm talking about. You're at work 24/7. Quite frankly, you don't have the time to sit down with your kids if you're going to give them that life that you're looking to give them, if they're going to pay for that school. Because nobody here wants, whose kid here is going to a regular Nigerian school? Nobody. Because you know for a fact that education platform is damaged. And I can't blame the teachers. I can't blame the principals. It goes all the way to the ministry. It goes all the way to the federal level. And so we are now stuck in the age of social media and in the age of games, which is good. You know, if your kid is coding, that's great. But you know, the one thing a lot of kids are missing now that a lot of adults who are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s upwards have, that the kids now don't have, they don't know how to communicate with each other. Everything ends up with stabbing, fighting, raping. And there's just too much of, we don't have, we're not communicating anymore. Face to face, talking to each other, listening. The ability, people undermine the ability to listen. You know, the need to hear everybody's voice. I say this normally when I'm doing my coaching sessions with new actors. And sometimes you find actors that are slightly new, but slightly a bit more developed or known, who come to me and they're wondering why they get slagged off a lot when they do some work. And then we watch it together and I express myself. First of all, there's a lot of competition. There is nothing wrong with healthy competition, but you guys know that. I know that. A lot of the younger kids, and when I say younger, people in their 20s, and I'm not abusing anybody or accusing or demeaning for those listening. It is the truth. We're being truthful, that's where it is. A lot of people are competing unhealthily. You know, this idea of you're on set, you're playing a role. You're supposed to play off each other. That is my training. That is how every time. And I don't care, from when I was little to when I was in theater and to when I started making films, that has always, you play off each other, which is why you rehearse. Even if you have a short rehearsal period, you work with each other. Kids don't do that. There is the need to. Why? And we as parents get carried away also and say it sometimes to the children. When your mother says it to you or to me when I was younger, when I was in college here in the UK, I remember at that time I'd become known in Nollywood already. And I said I wouldn't leave, you know, and start up again, come here. Why would I be here? I was already in Unilag. And my mom felt I wasn't concentrating, which was true. If anybody knew, you know, back in the late 90s then, for me, I wasn't. There was a lot of stuff going on work-wise. And so when I came here, the one thing you do notice, so did I lose time in terms of work? Yes. But did I gain experience? So first of all, a different understanding of education and focus and how to stabilize both without compromising on either. Yes. And so my mom would say, my mom is Igbo. Everybody, you know, I'm Igbo. My mom is an Onitsha woman. So my mom normally used to say, the children who balance it, the people who do it, they don't have two heads. You figure it out, right? You have to, if it is what you want. If you want to act, well, you got to do it. You want to act and sing, you've got to do it, but you've got to get an education also. So what the in here holds you down to, as a back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, for me was that a lot of people didn't know me here, and the school doesn't care that you're a star. You're in school, you got to do your schoolwork. Meanwhile, in Unilag, I had HODs that got carried away by seeing me in school and would say, oh, you people are working, you know, and it was okay to miss a few classes. Those are systematic issues that I found wasn't okay here, but was okay in Nigeria. And fundamentally, whether we like it or not, communication is king for everything. So whether you're a creative person, someone in the education system, you're in sciences, to create, you need to communicate. And so for me, at the foundation of that is to fix the communication level. Now, competition for you is you have to beat IK's son. Why would he be higher than you in class? My parents didn't care about beating. They cared about you being the best you could be. The two different things. Beating somebody in class and being the best you can be are two different things. I know a bunch of kids who used to come first in biology. Like, listen, they dusted me at the assemblies. You know those kids. Oh, this person, there was this particular girl, I will never forget her name. Rosemary Innocent, best in chemistry. Rosemary Innocent. And then my mom would come for one of these 16 days. You know, if you were just thinking, oh my God, the kind of talking to you're going to get after this announcement. You won't sleep for 3 days. You will have those dreams where the girl is passing you always. But you see, the thing is, after they called Rosemary Innocent, they called up the school choir to sing. I was on that group. We did a play. I was on that group. There were things I did that Rosemary couldn't do.
Yeah, you had your own bragging rights.
I had my own bragging rights. You see, so there was a balance. So creating that balance, like Karachi is saying, I was saying earlier, is king.
Wow.
And that for me, we can go on and on about this.
Yeah,
That
definitely,
is,
definitely. We can definitely go on and on. But I think that's something that we have quickly established from Tipo to Karachi, and to what you just finished saying now. It's that it's very, very important to be serious about, you know, building creativity into our curriculum, especially from the early stages. But also another thing that you raised that has been a very powerful thought in my mind as I even think about this subject, it's the issue of government schools and private schools. You know, so you asked a very poignant question, and I'm sure nobody dared to answer that question. Like, who amongst you wants to put your child in a public school? Basically, that's what your question is.
Yes, so but we all went to one, which is fundamentally funny.
Exactly.
We all went to one.
My primary school was a public school, you know, and I still cherish that experience. So it's actually very heartbreaking to look today and see that nobody really wants to send, you know, any of their, you know, children to a public school. What do we need to do? Rotimi, do you think that we stand a chance, you know, even beyond just even building creativity in our public, I should say, public school system? Because I know that a lot of the private schools are doing the most, honestly, but I think that I'm more concerned about the public schools. Again, not everybody can afford the private school education, and so it's causing a lot of issues in the system. That's why corruption is rife, because parents who are earning below, I don't know, whatever they are earning, but they still have to pay these heavy private school fees and things like that. So this is a serious system problem. So Rotimi, do you think, seeing that you've had an opportunity to work with teachers and students and, you know, you've had the opportunity to influence leaders in that sector, do you think that we stand a chance of, one, rescuing our private education system, and two, building creativity into our curriculums? Rotimi, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So I think
so I'll say big yes to the question, and I will back it up with my reasons why I said that. Is sometimes failure or challenges actually give a very good contrast to what we need to do. So it's already a case for change. Listening to Andrea, listening to Karachi, listening to Oladipo, it's already, you already have a case for change at hand. But then when we look at the public education sector, especially the public schools, you begin to trace what the root causes are, because most of the times, I for one, is the reason for what we see. And I've come to realize that we have a big issue on the management of education. That's education administration itself.
Yeah.
And really, that's what's now leading to the things we are now seeing on the surface. So we need the regulators to get to a point where they themselves get regulated, because education as a system has been heavily politicized. So the systemic nature of, so for example, Chika was saying something about professional development and all that, and I started smiling. And the reason is because if you really work closely, it's not that professional development has stopped or ended. The only thing is that because it's heavily politicized, it is not agenda-based. It's almost like a settlement system driven to make sure that you are able to meet up with some scorecard of some sort.
The NTA system.
So we have people being trained, but to what end? So most of the time, in fact, sometimes I've been privileged to be part of some of these trainings, and you get feedback, direct feedback from the class, and they're telling you that, look, thankful for the great experience while you've trained us, but we don't feel that we'll be equipped or empowered to deploy some of these things. So you hear situations like, not yet, not yet. And these are the things that cripples the system. So you have empowered people who are stifled in expression, and it now leads to heightened frustration.
Yeah.
And then in some cases, we have what we have as the uneven spread of expertise, right? So a lot of times it's like there's just this quota that keeps getting the training, the funding, and so for example, the reopening of schools, you have a lot of schools that have been empowered with buckets, with sanitizers, with gloves, with all that. And you have another set of schools that they don't have that. Their lawns are now like, bushes and all those kind of things. But the way forward, I think, would be where we need to begin to play with what I call dead spaces. There are a lot of dead spaces in the public space, especially the public schools. And those are the quick wins for us to be able to leverage on. The dead spaces also exist in the private schools, but we need to come back to the purpose of education. I think before now, we've enjoyed the outsourcing of schooling, right, as education. So most of the time, people say, you're getting education, right? But the truth about it is we're specifically saying you're getting schooled. Now, schooling as a system is getting to fail. So we need to go back to the essence of education itself. The purpose of education, most times I tell people, is just two simple things. Number one, education is meant to prepare people for the future. Number two, is meant to make people create the future. So if you can't prepare people for the future, and if they can't create the future, then it's no education at all.
Wow.
The drivers and enablers of that education is called the school system, right? Now, the formal school system, which is either private school or public school, which is still under public education because we don't have private education in Nigeria. So public education, actually by public schools failed after a while. So we had private schools take on a chunk of public education as a responsibility. Now, getting to move on that curve, what we now need to do is to begin to explore the several layers of industries, which is what the topic is about. Building creativity, meaning that we need to not just talk about what is wrong, we need to begin to add what is missing. So, for example, we wouldn't have a Chika if she wasn't able to get to a place where she was nurtured and she now found expression for her pursuit and her gifting. That would not have been done just by a tertiary institution. That would now bring to the question, do we have, for example, performance schools, not just primary and secondary and tertiary schools? Do we have finishing schools? I remember that growing up, we had a place like C School,
Yes.
Right? And C school is a finishing school, but it's also a life school.
Yeah.
There's the cave school, there's the mountain school, there's the forest school. These are dead spaces. We don't need too much of infrastructure to make that happen. And you know, a lot of fuss has been about technology. And I tell people, technology actually starts with vision. Vision is the best technology you can ever have because it's not tied to gadgets. It's not gadgetified. It's not gamified. It's not platform-based. Vision is the first thing. So when we look at it, what are the dead spaces? Most of our public schools are not really the best infrastructure, but they are purpose-built. So you get to a public school, you have massive land, but you don't have massive play. You have massive structure, but you don't have the structures being harnessed. You understand what I'm saying? So most of the time, so it starts with dead spaces. This doesn't have anything to do with 26% of the budget allocation. Because I wrote an article some months back, and a lot of people attacked me. I said, we don't need more funding in our budgets for education in allocation. And people said, why? I said, because if you check the funding that goes to the budget or the budget expression, most of the time the budget goes to recurrent expenditure and not capital expenditure. And even the capital expenditure is vendor-based, right? There was a particular state in Nigeria, I will not mention the name. The budget for training for the entire education of that state, not for primary school, the budget for training was 2 million naira.
What?
2 million naira. Not one training, the training for the year.
Wow.
It's something you can check. I'm not going to say the name, it's something you can check. I have done something in that state that they call it a teacher support program. The teacher support program designed for that state, only for 5 local governments, the budget was 2 million. How much more when you know, and you know when it's education in the state, you're talking about tertiary, you're talking about basic education, you're talking about secondary school education. So, and the reason is not because there was not money to go in there. It's because there were not enough vendors that had the expertise of that area. So they funneled money towards feeding.
That is just hideous.
Wow. I think that Rotimi is freezing. Can you guys hear me?
No,
Yeah, we can hear you.
he's frozen. We can hear you, but
Okay, so
yes.
he's back. Okay, Rotimi, continue.
Yeah. So I said, so for example, imagine we decided to say, let us increase the budgeting of that state in education. You know what would happen? We would have increased the waste or the leakage in that state. So most of the time, I think what we need to do is we need to start giving more expression to the things that are missing in education, not the things that are just wrong. So we need more finishing schools. We need performance schools. I take, for example, the music and the entertainment industry is finding a lot of expression, but we are not turning it into science. So what's happening is this. A lot of times, we find out that we celebrate the successes in an element, but we do not try to replicate the process. So what happens at the end of the day is that the entire world will study the science of what became our success story. They will replicate it back to us, and then the tables will turn, right? So, and this is where we need to understand the greatest secret, which is in the open about education, is that education can be tampered with. And once education is tampered with, and in a positive light, it will also reflect in the school system. The school system is the driver of the function of education. And that's where we need to get it right.
Wow, Rotimi, I just got schooled. What? That was quite a lot. Massive land, no play. Wow. Because that's actually very heartbreaking. Because every time you go into a public school, it's a beautiful edifice. It's, you know, it's exactly what it should be. Like, it breaks my heart when you go into a lot of private schools. It's like children are huddled into small buildings. There's no play field.
I don't get that.
It's
when I was in high school, now I went to FGGC Abloma, right? So if you went to any of the FGGCs, you know. Listen, so there was something for everybody. I have never been the kitchen kind of person. Just never been my calling. It's not happening. So we had agriculture, which means we had farms in school.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do now, and then people right now, and I find that when you hear home economics, everybody just presumes is either you doing muffler stuff. All of it was broken down. I'm mortified by it. Like, I learned how to do tie and dye and batik and all of that whilst I was in high school. And there were people who did baking and cooking. That was their thing. I did agriculture, but my agriculture did not include learning how to stem and all of that. I just liked tilling the ground and putting the already stemmed plants in and monitoring it. That was my thing. I liked that. Being out, not being monitored. Anybody who knows me knows that I can go cray-cray indoors. And breaking eggs and all of that with powder is not my thing. So everybody find it. And I liked the idea of being able to mix colors on a plain white cotton cloth and turning it into something else. And making designs with candle wax and making it stick after you had washed it. None of that is going on anymore. All those agricultural lands, everything has now become bushes. It's unfortunate, like my high school, a lot of us who are old students now have found ourselves where we're now busy fixing the dormitories, which is appalling. Like our dormitories used to be the coolest thing ever. We did a bunch of stuff there. I go back to it, it's ridiculous. And then one day they showed me, I haven't, so I put on.
It's 16 hours.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
And then I'm listening, there's an interview, and then somebody goes, oh, the vice principal of, and calls our school, and I'm rushing to listen to it because it was put on Facebook. And the guy starts to talk. And I am disappointed that that guy is the vice principal of a school that I went to.
Wow.
He wouldn't have gotten a job in the year. First of all, he had pronunciation issues. He did not address the issues that were at hand. He did not acknowledge that fundamentally, the money that was coming in was being used, just like Rotimi was pointing out, was being used for something else that was not important. And the health of the students were being endangered, and they did not see it as important to shift funds to deal with these things. So kids were sleeping in places where the roofs were caving in and all, you know, which was ridiculous. And for me, it made me feel sad. I remembered our principal, I remembered our vice principals, and just, you know, the thing that people take for granted now, and everybody keeps saying this thing, like I keep saying to most people, especially when you have addiction issue. See how everybody speaks clearly and we can all understand each other, irrespective of where we come from.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that there is a recent thing of everybody who speaks has to either have a nationalistic, well, not tribalistic accent? Have you all noticed that? And you sometimes think that, and everyone say, hey, it's because you went to school in the abroad. Those of you, your parents, that's not true.
Yeah.
Most of our teachers here were teachers who, and we have to remember that back in the 80s, I keep telling people, again, maybe because they removed history from the curriculum. If you understood the foundation and the history of Nigeria, you would know that at one point in time, going to England was not even a visaed contract. You went to England. In the 80s, if you were born as a Nigerian, if your mother had you in England up to 1983, you were born British. It was a known fact. And you had teachers who traveled to London or America and did training and came back. This was part of their training. So we all spoke clearly. Your diction was correct. Your pronunciation was correct because it was how your teachers spoke. I was doing a research for something a few years ago, way back. This was after I'd finished uni, and there was something a friend of mine would do, and we walked into Surulere. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm gonna say it. Anybody, whatever. And then I walked into Surulere High School. Listen, the teacher was teaching maths. Now this is how our kids fail. Okay, this is how the problem starts. Was teaching maths, and in between it at this class, and in between it, she started saying the numbers and doing the subtraction, the whole equation in Yoruba. So imagine the 15 students who come from the South, who are Igbo, who don't speak the language. How do they intend to pass that maths class?
Wow. I think this, Chika, hold that thought. I think this also buttresses what Rotimi was saying, that the people who actually, these people who administer this education they need to be regulated.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, I mean, how does that happen? And I'm sure nobody would question it, and I'm sure it will happen over and over again. That is actually crazy. Okay, because time is like not our friend. It's crazy how time flies when you're having fun, and we still have a lot to cover. So I will just jump straight to Deepo. Deepo, you know, when we talk about involving building creativity into our curriculum, I think that a lot of our leaders, people in decision-making places, when they see topics like this, I think what will come to their mind is, you know, all those etilogu dance, you know, children doing drama to welcome the governor to the local government, ceremony, one thing, one thing. But I know that it goes deeper than that. Because, like, you know, you and I, we've had conversations around this thing where we realize that creativity permeates every aspect of life. You know, it's actually, I would actually say that we need to actually make it compulsory for all primary school, universal basic education. I think that is a very compulsory thing because, I mean, even like great, like I tell people, Steve Jobs was an artist as far as I was concerned. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, because look at the business he has created, look at the products that he, these are very artistic expressions, you know, high artistic. So if we have our leaders and the people who regulate education in the room right now, what would you say to them concerning what we're talking about?
Okay. So just to borrow a leap from our conversation, this, you know, I think Rotimi touched the dead spaces play up a bit of a challenge because when we talk of education, most of us will think about the private education that we can provide our children with. Many of us can't really connect with what public out a school with a school bus that's fenced, where the number of children in the classroom can be counted, and so on and so forth. Everything else in a public school is that school, you know. So I feel that people in authority have no connection with what public school education is really like. That's the first point. Their children don't go there, even if it's within their constituency. They're either going there for a ceremonial activity to commission something, to put a borehole, a generator, but there is no real involvement in that process. So I think that I think there's more community effort that goes to fixing some of these things. In my opinion, I feel that associations and groups are more vested, interested partners that can be pressure groups in trying to change some of these things. Because if we look at it more from a policy perspective, the school systems are, except for federal schools, every other school is under the ambit of the state government. So, you know, if you look at policy, if it's not an FGC or an FGGC, then it doesn't really take any leaning from the regulation from a federal point of view. But if you have people who have attended those schools and have some kind of means of success, that may be a starting point in changing the conversation. If an alumni association goes to a school and they've got loaded pockets, they are more likely to influence what happens in that school. They may be able to start programs, you know, they may be able to say, hey, in addition to what the kids are doing educationally, they can also do X, Y, and Z. And I'll pose this question to all the panelists and even those who are attendees. What are your most vivid memories of school? It's not classroom. It's the drama you were part of. It's the football group that you played in. It's the exciting things you did, the days you dodged out of school. Those are the things that create excitement or create memories, you know, from our days in school. So I feel that the educational part, yes, is very strong on policy, which really is under the ambit of either the federal or the state government or whoever runs the schools. But when we think about things that are more extracurricular, I feel that if you have strong alumni presence or alma mater presence within the schools who can, you know, champion or endow some of these things. So it could be maybe a drama thing, it could be a science thing, whatever the case may be. You know that, you know, there's at least some level of monitoring that's going on because a lot of us are a product of that system. Those would be my thoughts about this.
Wow, thank you very much. I think that one of the things that stood out from what you said is that it's not just from the policy making level, but that we can also do a lot of work from the ground up. You know, so sort of what you talked about, the pressure groups and then the alumni, and while you were talking about it, I kind of just felt guilty myself because I'm not involved in anything that has to do with developing my alma mater, and I think I need to repent.
It can be understood. There are also, again, like what Rotimi said at some point, there's a lot of politicking also that takes you off at
Yes,
some point, and you
yes,
just lose interest, or you think, I can't be bothered with this. I have enough going on in my life.
exactly. True, true. Karachi, actually, I'm going to come to all my panelists with this question. Like, imagine that we have these policymakers in the room. What do we need to say to them? Karachi, so like Dibo had said, building from the ground up. But Chika quickly pointed out that yes, we can build from the ground up, but there's a lot of systematic or systemic frustrations that you will meet along the way. Karachi, what are your thoughts? How do we tackle these systemic issues? What needs to be done?
First of all, I'd just like to say there has to be a very deep-seated paradigm shift. And this paradigm shift cuts across everyone that is concerned. But let me just first of all start with the primary schools. So in the primary schools, you know how you encourage arts and creativity and all of that happening in the younger classes. So if a child is coloring and colors a face purple, oh, they're just expressing themselves. A face can be purple. But as you get into the older classes from primary 3 upwards into secondary, you now see where parents and teachers begin to encourage the children to grow up. Now, in that grow up mode, there begins to be a stifling of what is creative. And again, if you reward behavior, you want to reinforce. So if in the upper echelons of the education or upper stages, you're rewarding maths, you're rewarding literacy, you're rewarding the sciences, you're not rewarding the theater, you're not rewarding the poetic expressions, you're not rewarding the dance and drama, the music, the play, being able to play an instrument, write, you're not rewarding those things. You're inadvertently sending a quiet message. It's called the hidden curriculum. Every teacher has a hidden curriculum. For example, I might be teaching a lesson in maths, but what I want, my hidden curriculum is to get the children to express themselves and to speak confidently to a group of people. So for Nigeria, we've been operating a hidden curriculum that is in the subconscious. If you're not looking for it, you won't see that it's there. So let me give you a few points as to how we can fit into that. Number one, there is no, even from secondary school, students have to basically take ownership of creating their own platforms. For example, if you want to have an art event, most times it's the student that's creating it. I was a social prefect in my school, FGGC Oyo. And so to an extent, if you want to have a certain kind of event, you create it by yourself. So the school leaves that responsibility onto the people and not necessarily taking responsibility for that. And so you don't have things like sip and paint. Who says in university, if you're in the accounting department, you can't paint? Who says that? There was once a US president that retired and became a fantastic painter. Nobody knew he could paint. And so we have things like this that if we don't create those platforms for expression, you will lose the depth. Nigerians are deeply creative people. We are dangerous mentally. There is nowhere you put a Nigerian in that they do not take over.
I second that.
Something to celebrate after all.
If you remove that responsibility, just imagine, it's no longer the responsibility of a 16 or a 14-year-old.
I think Karachi is frozen.
Yeah, she'll come back in a bit.
Oh, okay.
So you don't. Okay. So if you don't take on that responsibility to create these platforms, of course, right now in secondary schools, the only let me get back. I've been connected. Sorry, 1 second, please.
Okay. All right.
So the only platforms where you see it, maybe we have expressions in music because Muson has an international competition that, exam that children write. There's the IGCSE, so parents allow their children to prepare for that. Other than that, any other thing that is not tied to a certificate is not promoted in Nigeria. And so you see, for example, let me even get into our schools. If you go abroad, you're going to find schools like Juilliard's. It's a dance school. So you're learning the other core curriculum, but you still get the essence of who you were created if you are a dancer. Do you understand? But we don't have that.
You only need
science and technology.
Four
Science and technology.
to
We don't have
dance.
school for the arts. Exactly. If you're a sportsman and you're in the US, you can get scholarships, not a scholarship, scholarships that will take you all through secondary school just because you have the ability to play basketball. We don't have that in Nigeria. So until you begin to change the paradigm, you will not have people supporting that paradigm. Let me give another example. Parents are obviously discouraging their children getting into the arts because they are mental and social stereotypes. You believe that it's people who are ne'er-do-wells in society. They are the ones with a certain type of hair, a certain type of dressing, I'm a thespian and a proud one at that. And I'm also a very responsible person, and I respect my father because he wasn't intimidated by that. Parents, your children are not your retirement plan. They are not put on the earth to help you in old age. I'm so sorry, but the good book says raise up a child in the way he should go, not the way you should go. So let's stop bringing that child as an empty vessel and then filling it in only with the things you believe they should become. And so you're having parents pushing children into be an engineer. Let me tell you something that will shock you. I did my master's in education with the University of Nottingham. And in my campus, if you studied architecture, your final year project is to construct the next architectural department on campus. The engineering department will build it. You didn't hear what I said?
Yeah.
So the architect will design it. The engineers will build it. So over time, every year, of Nottingham campus is looking better and getting better. Why? Because the students, their brain is being taxed. Not what we're doing in Nigeria. In Canada, you can't go to school without working. You're encouraged to go to school and work. As a matter of fact, Nigerian parents are now discouraged from sending their children money in Canada. Why? Because it's not here. We're all about paper. But they're all about knowledge. You know, there's knowledge, skill, and understanding. I'm so sorry that I'm so passionate about this.
No, it's okay.
So guys,
Karachi.
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry.
Karachi, preach,
what we sell in Nigeria is knowledge. What people need and convert that knowledge into wisdom is understanding. Understanding is missing because we've taught our children the knowledge, cram, and then get to pass exams. But when you give the knowledge and then you give them that platform to understand, how is understanding created? By practice. How do skills get better? By practice. So you believe that you have a child that's very creative. I was about to speak in tongues. In Israel, from the age of 6, they already separate the children that have an aptitude for military. They separate the children that have an aptitude for the science from the age of 6. So the schools you begin to go to are not the nominal everyday school where you have a mixed curriculum. The schools you begin to go to are schools that are doctored to fit who you are. There are children who I've met those children. I've met a 4-year-old child that prophesies, a 4-year-old girl. If she tells you something, it's going to happen. She was 4. In Israel, these kids are pulled out and they move them into military and intelligence. We need to begin to think differently. The last time I checked, I Googled the changes in the Nigerian curriculum sometime in 2017. What was the bone of contention? Not even the fact that we're raising digital natives. That hasn't even come into play in our curriculum at all. The bone of contention was, should we teach IRK and CRK separately, or should we embed it into the civic? How can that be a bone of contention in 2017? Thank you. And again, if you look nationally, there are no platforms. There's a dearth of platforms for these children to express themselves. You have abroad, you have the script spelling bee competition. You have, of course, the science camps. All sorts of things are happening where your children, I tell parents, never travel abroad without booking your child for a summer camp. Never visit anywhere. Don't waste the holiday periods. Lock them. If you believe you're called to the arts, then expose your child to a function of the arts. If they believe they're called to write, then get them right. I work in a school that is affiliated to a company that sponsors the Nigerian Prize for Literature. For the very first time, for I don't know how many years that they've been sponsoring it, this is the last thing I'll say, an 11-year-old girl from a Lagos school was nominated as one of the top 10 authors. An 11-year-old girl.
Wow.
And I know her mother, and I know how. So when we say, yeah, there's a school, but yes, there's also the parent before the school. You know what the good book says? It says when Jesus went into the temple and began to speak to the Pharisees, he says, Mary noted these things in her heart. The first point of contact with how gifted a child is the parent. So you're going to have to start noting down what makes my child unique. What can my child do? This 11-year-old girl is sitting at par with top professors whose books are also, up for the running. She may not win, but oh my goodness, she has my respect for getting there. Yeah. So I think we need to begin to change our paradigm and say, how can we create platforms for our children? It can't just be Big Brother. Come on, people. That cannot be the only platform. And like what Mr. Rotimi Eyitayo said, we need to find the gaps and we need to begin to fill it. So there's a job for the community. There's a job. And there's a job for even the creative industry is not free of blame. If we get to that part, maybe I'll talk about that. But I think this is enough for now. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Karachi. That was some serious preaching right there. And everything is on point. I mean, paradigm shift. There has to be a paradigm shift. In fact, for me, trying to even promote this conversation on social media, I promised, that there's going to be a paradigm shifting conversation. And you just totally brought it home, Karachi. Thank you. Thank you so much. You said something about specialization, how children are pulled from the pool and put into specialized places. So let me go to Taiwo Ajisefini, has a question, and it kind of relates to that, and I would let you answer that, Karachi. The question is, I'd like to find out if Nigeria's education system takes into consideration the different learning styles and interests of students. Not everyone is cut out to be a lawyer or a doctor. Where is the space for mechanics and farmers?
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's a really good question, though. Yes, in school, so let me rephrase that. In schools that know what they are doing, yes, when you plan a structured lesson, you make sure that it feeds into, so I tell people, you can imagine planning a lesson, and many times we plan it as 2D. 2D is chalk and talk. So you stand in front of the class, you write on the board, and you talk to the children. You're going to kill those children. Someone said schooling happens after class ends. And that is very, very true. But so in a teacher that knows what they're doing in the classroom, in your plan, there is something for those that are kinesthetically intelligent. That means they learn better when they're moving. And there are those who are auditory, they learn best when they're listening. Others are visual, they learn best when they're looking. Others are spatial, they learn best when they move around. Others are musical, they learn best when there's some form of music, particularly if you're teaching children who are on the special needs spectrum. So you must have a plan that sorts all these people out. So that's why I tell people a good teacher is a performer. If you're starting with all the kids, you're going to be acting, you're going to be singing, you're going to be engaging their attention through all of these. So if I'm teaching art together, there has to be something concrete for the children to use. There has to be a song about it. We need to go outside and do some adding or picking up. Your lesson has to have all of these elements. Now, coming to agriculture and all those other parts of it, yes, definitely you need to do that. There are lessons, science lessons that feed themselves into agriculture and planning. There are others that feed themselves into constructing something. And that's why you see some schools who can afford it have STEM clubs, and it's not cheap. STEM clubs are not cheap because those materials don't come easy. Now it's STEAM because they've added the arts, but that's when the children can actually apply the maths they're doing in class. So it's not just telling me 2 plus 2. What will 2 plus 2 help me do? But then you now take those kids to the shop and ask parents to give them 100 naira, and then they have to budget something, come into class and build with what they have. So it's called active learning. It's a very practical form of delivering the curriculum. However, let me say to something Chika mentioned earlier, the reason why you can get a teacher that's saying, is you go, is he come, is not because, but the truth is, you only hire what you can afford. I don't know, there's a better way of saying it. But if you constantly hire teachers from the bottom rung of the ladder, that's what you're going to get. The teachers should be from the top. The teachers should be the smartest. The teachers should be the most intelligent, because that's the kind of nation you're building. But if you're not hiring, and if you want to hire those, then there's an amount that goes with that. It doesn't come cheap.
The cost, everything.
If you're going to get that, you must be ready to put the money in to get that. If you're going to train, let me tell Mr. Rotimi Eyitayo was talking about training and people's response to training, and I was laughing. I did one of my my master's dissertations in why training is not making Nigerian teachers better. And one of the things I found out, Mr. Ike, was that many of those teachers from the public, school systems, they see those training days as a get out of jail free card. Where, you don't have to be in school. There's meat pie and Fanta. Oh my God.
Wow.
So it's exciting for them, and they just get a day out of school. But if you ask them what they learned, they really can't retain much. That's because we're not asking for the best. We're not asking for the best. In China, you cannot teach if you haven't done a master's from a certain accredited university. You can't teach if you. I didn't say a degree. I didn't say a teacher's. I said a master's. Then you cannot understand why they're producing entrepreneurs by the dozen and training them out. Do you understand?
We're going to begin to teach children the way, or begin to make agriculture, or engineering, or bring in all the different multiple intelligences. You must hire the cream of the crop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Taiwo, I'm sure you can see that Karachi has done amazing with this question. Chika, some of the things that Karachi talked about, we already had it in a private conversation where you asked the question, like, who finishes from school, for instance, who finishes top in the university or does their master's and says, oh, I'm going to teach. Who does that?
I don't.
No.
To the public school. To the public school.
You did it, but you're getting paid for it.
Not necessarily. My first salary was 25,000 naira. And it stayed at 25,000 naira for a very long time. I got into education as a teaching assistant, and I grew on from there. And it stayed as 25K for a long time, Chika. I lie not. But when you believe that it's a calling, that's another thing. I'm not a round peg in a square hole. I'm a square peg in a square hole. So for me, it's beyond what the Nigerian government has to offer or what the school owner is paying. For me, you can't have me in your school, and that school will not. I don't say that lightly. I don't say that to brag. I say that because for me, it's in my brain. If you're a teacher,
you started something. Somebody said 25K. When?
Karachi,
Chika,
wow.
Chika, let me make you laugh. Chika, let me make you laugh. With that 25K, I was able to save 9,000 naira and buy SIM card. Mm-hmm.
Wow, so this was
not too far away.
I was about to say, guess what?
That teachers have. Teachers can save for Africa.
But outside of that, you are an enterprising person. Don't start. You see, I say this to actors, new actors who want to start. And I say, what's your side hustle? What job do you have? You weren't just teaching. Girl, you were making things work everywhere. So that's the idea. The problem we have fundamentally in Nigeria is this right now. Like I keep telling people, my first job, I started working when I was 14. Which most of you, at least if you were not doing something, there was something you were doing. I started working. My first job was some multi-choice when they still came with those satellite dishes back in the day. If you saw those, And this was in Enugu, and it was at a trade fair, and that was, after that, they took me on permanently. Now, I can go on and go on. So I will just answer Karachi's thing. The one thing I will add to that is, anybody listening, we've spent too much time. So I hear some people say things like, oh, because I don't have a degree, I can't get a job. Or, I have a degree, but it is in this, so I can't do this. People aren't spending time anymore researching what kind of skills. There's a lot of skills you can acquire online now. If you have time to go on Facebook, you have time to go on Instagram, Pinterest, and the rest of it, and Snapchat. Honey, you got time on your hands to learn some skills. Excuse me, okay? Don't stop.
Wow, thank you, Chika. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Man, I wish that we can go on, but we have to start to bring this to a wrap. So, Chika, sorry, you had more things to say.
No, so that all I was fundamentally saying is this. So you were saying if somebody in policy was in the room, I'd say, first of all, you know what? I will point out something Rotimi said once, and everybody here has touched on it. Dipo has touched on it. Karachi has touched on it. At some point, we need to start breaking down what is federal, what is state, we need to stop pretending we don't know, because the state government knows which ones are their responsibilities. How is it that you can go to Lagos State and there are some public schools you go to and you're wondering, wow, if you go to the ones around VI, they don't go to the one in Bagada and compare it.
Wow.
The same thing we were saying. We all know what we're doing. And guess what? I say this, and I'm not saying that being corrupt or whatever, and anybody thinking that, take that thought out of your head. It's not a Nigerian thing. As you can see, with all the debating going on in America, you know that there is no government in the world that is not corrupt. After all, there are people standing outside in Belarus talking every day. You think that they don't think. Our problem is not, I'm not saying that the Nigerian government's corruption is not a problem, but fundamentally as a people, we generally have a people's problem. Yeah. There is this innate, deceitful, disturbing focus now on what tribe you are from and how it affects your life.
Interactions.
Or anything you do. So if you're Igbo, you get this, or you don't get this because you're Igbo. You people too like money. You're Yoruba, you get this. Our Lagos boys, I said, are you from Ogun? I say, son of the soil. And then if you're Hausa, oh, forgive me, I understand that this is a church platform, but it is
yes, please.
I was not raised. I was not raised in that kind of Nigeria. Karachi Hausa, I understand at least how to greet in Hausa. I understand their culture. They respect man. I have a bunch of friends from across Nigeria. I went to school in Port Harcourt. My father was my late dad was a custom officer. So I have lived in every part of Nigeria. I understand that there are differences, but those are differences that have been there before my parents were born, and they will be there going forward. They are not the things that hold us back. If we learn to respect each other, appreciate each other, listen to each other, the fact that somebody is Igbo but understands what needs to be done in your state. Like there's a girl that got, I will just skip in a few things, that got an appointment in Ogun State about a few months ago. I saw it on social media, and somebody said it cannot happen. She's Igbo. She will leave her state and come here. Never. They kept abusing the governor, and I asked a simple question. I said, is she qualified? Has anybody checked her certification, her work experience? Why are we talking about the wrong things? Somebody say, now wow, if it is in your state. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many people who are from the north, who are farmers or meat wholesale meat sellers in Enugu that came from the north? So you will say you will not buy their meat because they're Hausa? What bull is that? We're talking crap lately. Very uneducated. These are people, and unfortunately, when you're looking at these conversations, these are people who are educated, who are certified. Like Ayachi is talking, I was laughing before. See all the universities you talk that you went to. You know, Nottingham, you did the master's, you're talking. Government You are mixing in places where, you know, people receive, people take on your smartness. And you came back into a Nigeria of, oh, this is where I am, might not be exactly okay, so this is what I'm going to do to make it work. Okay? So for me, I called me the other day. Was I not doing my hair myself? Don't I have the kids here? I said to somebody, sometimes I do a little bit of juxtaposing thing where I start talking about the skills that you can acquire. And we put a limit on things that you can do, which doesn't make sense because you're a teacher. Okay, I'll go back to what Karachi is saying. My degree is in education. I have a BA in education, right? But to get that degree here in the United Kingdom, you had to have a job as a teacher already or as a teaching assistant. So you had 1 year in school, really going and doing your courses. After that, if you couldn't get a job, the department would have to let you go.
Wow.
Okay? But in Nigeria, you go 4 years in a university without actually practicing what it is you're going to do. It doesn't work.
Wow.
It is not ideal. Does not make sense of any kind. When I went and did my certification as a producer in LA with relativity education, you finish all that, your training, your discussions and all of that. We had to shoot. Everybody who I went to school with still remembers me. And I wasn't the only Nollywood person there. And that was because in the morning we got stuck with a bunch of things, so we started late. But we had a time. You pick up your gear, you put it back where it is, and you submit your tapes and all of that. And if you did not do that, you failed. So ideally, I told my actors and my crew members, no lunch. Go buy something, put it in your bag. And they kept telling me, but there are rules in LA. So there are rules that guard with each association that guide you whilst you're working. People have to eat, people have to get a break. But I knew that the lunch place will close before lunch. So I said, go get something to eat. We will break for lunch, but it won't be a regular lunch time. Wow. And I pushed it as close as I could to the end of lunchtime, and then I gave them a break. Okay? And the people from school came like 3 times to warn me about how I would be fine. I said, don't worry, we do it in Nollywood. It will work here.
Wow. Chika, thank you so much.
It will work here. So fundamentally, my take is this.
Yeah.
You can, what everybody here said is, it is always good, first of all, to have knowledge of what it is that needs to be done. If you don't have knowledge of it, getting your wife or your sister's friend or somebody you're dating, it doesn't play. And I'm not saying, hey, here in Boris has worked with his girlfriend as the head of the party, and we saw that play out. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in everywhere else in the world, but in the midst of that also, you had people who had knowledge of what needed to be done. Please let's start hiring people who understand what needs to be done. And again, sometimes Karachi is doing what she's doing. She's writing, she's creating. So she's not earning from one pocket. Also, we have to start learning this idea of your salary from this your one job is going to solve all your problems. It's only in Nigeria I see it. It doesn't happen here. Most people who do businesses in Nigeria don't do one business. The woman who sells lace in the market also has opened a shop for her daughter to sell bed sheet. And, you know, there are multiple income streams. We have to learn that also as a people. What is the second thing that you know how to do? So that way you don't get caught to the point where you find yourself being complacent.
And being frustrated.
Not just frustrated, being complacent and overlooking what needs to be done because you're collecting something on the side. Because then, you see, what we do is that our integrity gets compromised. And that's how it begins. It is with little things like that. That just touched up on all of the creativity with children and all of that. And I totally agree when she starts to say from kids. I knew I was going to be an actor as a little girl. And I will tell you for a fact, by the time I was 5, I'd done my first advert. Anybody here who watched Beck's advert, when you had the Beck's cabin biscuit back in the 80s, I was in it. B-E-K-K, Beck's,
Chika, thank you so much.
My mother used to call me her Michael Jackson. My mother knew I was different. She
Chika,
understood it.
Chika, I know you can go on and on and on.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So
This is a place of passion
understand
for
me.
every one of us.
Yeah. So for me, everybody, my thing is find out what your kid is good at. There is something, whether it's painting, molding, whatever, cutting grass. There's some people here, there's competition for cutting grass here or for find out what it is, harness it, encourage it, boost it. Everything cannot be left for the system.
True. Thank you so much, Chika. Thank you. Finally, our time is really fast spent. But I would read one more question from the Q&A and thank everybody who has sent questions in the chat box. I'm so sorry we'll not be able to take a lot of the questions, but I will take one last question and then I would come.
Questions and see which questions.
I will come to Rotimi with the question and also with I think it ties into what we're talking about. If we had policymakers in the room, what are we saying to them? So this Kofo Karunwi says, so what is the practical way forward? Many of us know these things, and what are the things that we need to start to do? So Rotimi, the policymakers are in the room right now. What are the practical ways forward? What is the way forward? What do we say to them?
Thank you very much. I think the first thing I'll need to say is we need to have an agenda. No education system grows without an agenda. And the agenda simply is curriculum has to meet with industry. Every curriculum that we would play, either from the system level of curriculum, school level of curriculum, class level of curriculum, it must meet with industry. That's the only way we can now see that we are actually acting serious about it. And there's a model to do that. It's called CALM, just like you have the buzzword calm down. Calm down. C is contextual content. A is adaptation. A lot of times we hear of adoption instead of adaptation. So we want to have British curriculum, we adopt. We want to have American curriculum, Finnish curriculum, we adopt. We need adaptation. Education is global, but it's also contextual, which means it's local. And then the L is there is a linkage. You see, one of the things our panelists were trying to express is the fact that we fail to understand that there's the economy around education, and then there's also the numbers. So when you see a school and the vision of a school appears, you also see the vision of school uniform. So the educational leaders or the policy makers, they need to that will raise the economy out of education. In UK, where Chika is talking about, 46% of UK's GDP is from education tourism. Yes. Not education, tourism, 46%.
Wow.
Right? So which tells you, and then the M is there must be a medium and there must be modification. So think about it. We're in the tropics. We don't need suits for our school uniform. Imagine we're wearing Ankara for uniforms.
I have been saying that for long.
The clothing industry will spiral. You understand? Imagine our sportswear were in Adire. The clothing industry will spiral, meaning that curriculum is beginning to meet with industry. The purpose of inter-house sport is not because it's just co-curricular or extracurricular, but we can start having the sports commission to source for Olympians from the school inter-house sports. That standardizes it. That's curriculum meeting industry. The purpose of having football tournaments, principal court, and all those things is for us to be able to turn it into an economy. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And that's why a lot of people are leaving Nigeria, get to better pastures, because there must be the end. Now, the end justifies the means. So when we look at the school, if the school is not going to create a positive means towards the end, you know what happens? People move away from the desirable, they embrace the available, because the available will become the desirable.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rotimi. I think that we've kind of formulated a communique to the policymakers, and that is very simple in what Mr. Rotimi has said. Curriculum must meet industry. Everything Chika has said, everything Karachi has said, everything Dibo has said can be summarized in this sentence. Curriculum must meet industry. Thank you so much. Sorry?
Please, can I say one last thing?
Yes, please, Karachi.
I'll be very fast about it. And for this, I'm speaking to those in the core creative industry and not those in education now. I'm also in the creative. With my husband, we own a production company, and we just finished Halita on Africa Magic. And it was quite a profound production. But then there's something that we have noticed that in the creatives, if you want to begin to feed into changing the paradigm in Nigeria, we're going to have to get our acts together as an industry. We need to begin to put the structures in place. We need to begin to show the government how much exactly is being brought in by the creative and the visual and the performing arts. We need to have our papers. We need to have our ducks in a row. We need to have data about how many people are going to theater. And all of these, we don't respect data as a country, and it's very sad. And as an industry, in the creatives, we need to start creating this data. Then you can begin to command interest from private companies. You can begin to command buy-ins from people. You can, let me tell you, what I'm even trying to say that let's change things. A DOP, a director of photography on a good project can make 2 million in 2 weeks. Directed, which doctor,
yes, and that's very powerful to Karachi. And there's no data anywhere that shows these things, so people don't know that people make
Can I correct
no,
that?
Chika, no, Chika, you cannot come in. No, you cannot.
I need to. I'm sure everybody is fine.
Go ahead. So
okay, so in 2014, I'm just giving information. Everybody just feed into what Karachi has said. I'm not changing the topic. I'm saying, and I'm talking about the creative industry. Strictly creative, not education now. Yeah. 2014 report from the United States International Trade Commission, states that Nollywood on average, 2014 to the Nigerian economy, $600 million.
Wow.
You lost the United States, Chika.
No. I'm saying for Nollywood.
For Nollywood, yes.
For Nollywood to the Nigerian economy.
Yes. Thank you so much,
This is their research. And then Nollywood employs over 1 million people yearly in Nigeria.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chika.
The fundamental thing is, I'm just adding, and if you don't say it, people don't know. Yeah. We suffer, Karachi, the problem we suffer, and which is why multi-choice continues to be the one hanging in there, and then we're hanging, is that we don't have any co-production treaties. That's all I wanted to say. We don't have any existing one. Yeah. And meanwhile, SA, which is sitting down in Nigeria, do you understand why for multi-choice Nigeria is important? They have nine core treaties.
Chika, thank you.
You people should not get me started.
Please. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all. Everybody that has tuned in. Thank you so much. Thank you. We got to go. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye. Happy Independence, Nigeria.
Happy Independence, Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Rotimi. Thank you, Mr. Dipo. Thank you, Chika. Really nice meeting you guys.
Same here, darling. It was great meeting you all. We should do this again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karachi. Chika.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Bye.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, we're on a regular. Well done. And for everybody who tuned in, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bessie, thank you very much. All right, then. See you all. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Okay.